Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. Let's begin. In chapter 48, we continue our discussion on tolerance. Many are familiar with the concept of drug tolerance, which refers to the reduced responsiveness of the body to a drug after continuous use. The concept of tolerance in G theory is similar and can be simply understood as the reduced activation of a corresponding G after multiple inputs of similar G waves. For example, if a child is given a certain snack multiple times a day, they may no longer be as excited when they see that snack. Similarly, a patient with a phobia who is continuously exposed to the sensitizing environment may gradually see their fear response diminish. From a philosophical perspective, we can consider the drugs entering the body as input G waves and the target sites where the drugs take effect as the locations where the corresponding G exists. Thus, drug tolerance can be seen as a form of tolerance in G theory. Similarly, if we consider the antigens entering the body as input G waves, then after the G wave input, the change in the body's immune environment can be seen as a newly formed G when similar antigens are input again. The pathological manifestations in the body are greatly reduced or disappear, which can also be seen as tolerance in G theory. Tolerance is a manifestation that can be broadly understood as an individual's adaptation to the environment, transitioning from a strong reaction state to a weak or non-reactive state. In other words, the reaction pattern has changed, meaning the corresponding G has changed. Therefore, the occurrence of tolerance is part of the process where G waves reshape the corresponding G. The initial strong reaction state, as mentioned in previous chapters, often include often includes various pleasure and fear responses. These strong reactions occur because the input G waves directly or indirectly activated the corresponding instinctive sub-G through existing G connections. If we consider the process where the first input of a specific G wave leads to a strong reaction as the establishment of that specific G, then the first time is undoubtedly a strong activation of that G. Thus, the first strong reaction is undoubtedly a strong release of the G energy of that specific G. Note that the combinability and multi-significance of G must be applied skillfully. In subsequent G wave inputs, the body transitions from a strong reaction to a weak or non-reactive state, which can be seen as the inability of the specific G to continuously release its G energy due to depletion. Similarly, due to the change in the reaction pattern, we can consider that the specific G has been reshaped. The reshaping of a G is reflected in the strengthening, abandonment, and generation of its subGs. These three manifestations also include the strengthening, abandonment, and the generation of G connections between subGs. Therefore, the reshaping in the tolerance process is often the abandonment of the subg that causes the strong reaction state within the specific G, which also includes the abandonment of the G connections with that subg. In Pavlov's dog experiment, through the pairing of a bell and food, a bell sound G is established in the dog's brain through G connections with the food G, and the food G is connected to the player sub G through the previous fading experience G. If we extrapolate from this, if the dog is fed the same food multiple times, the philosophical reaction of the dog will cause the food G to form a G connection with the discomfort sub G. On this basis, if the dog is continuously fed this food, but the G connection between the dog's food G and the discomfort sub G will be continuously strengthened. An important manifestation is that even if the bell and food are paired each time, the dog no longer secretes saliva. In this example, the specific G is broadly the dog's feeding G, which initial includes the bell sound sub-G, food sub-G, and player sub-G. Through multiple feedings, the G connection between the food sub-G and the player sub-G is gradually abandoned, accompanied by the generation and strengthening of a new sub-G. The discomfort sub-G, thus this specific G has been reshaped as a whole, and the dog's saliva secretion is greatly reduced, which can be understood as the depletion of the G energy of this specific G. In this process, the dog's physiological changes lead to the depletion of the G energy of the player sub-G, making it no longer activated. If we continue to force feed the dog this food at every meal, this is inhumane behavior. However, if it is strictly implemented, the dog will have a strong discomfort, meaning the G energy of this specific G reaches its peak in the opposite direction. Continuing to force feed this food and energy at, at every meal, if the dog does not run away or die as a result, then the G energy of this discomfort sub-G will also be depleted, and the G connection between the food sub-G and the discomfort sub-G will be abandoned. The dog will gradually develop a new numb adaptation to this food. In the long term, there's no pleasure or dislike. In the short term, influenced by some additional factors, there is a slight dislike and a slight liking. If this food is fed to the dog for a long time on this basis, due to the long-term sim- simultaneous activation effect, the food G will inevitably form close G connections with multiple sub-Gs of the dog's growth G, and this food will also become an inseparable part of the dog's life. The same principle can be roughly applied to the relationship between husbands and wives. When a young man and a woman fall in love at the first sight, it is like a dog seeing a certain food for the first time. After a period of sweetness, reshaping becomes apparent, and the quarreling period arrives. When the quarreling period reaches its peak, if they can endure it, then a non-adaptation comes. If they spend a long time in this non-adaptation together, then the old couple becomes inseparable for each other. This process reminds us a few points. First, do not impulsively get married during the initial sweet period. Second, couples with self control can last longer. Third, when the non adaptation arrives, love can be rebuilt, meaning the G connections with the pleasure sub G can be strengthened again. Of course, you can have other insights and experience them yourself. Note that this chapter mentions the opposite G and G, which is new content and will be mentioned again later. Okay, that's all the content today. See you next time. Bye bye.